What I think it's very important to consider is that most of the studies about the effectiveness of psychotherapy, different kind of psychotherapies, what they have shown that it's not so important the model or the way of doing psychotherapy, but the relationship between the therapist and their clients. So what we can learn from Amazonian shamanism is the relationship that the shamans, or curanderos as they prefer to be called, develop with their clients. And there are differences in the sense that in Amazonian shamanism, the curandero is seen as having special powers, that these special powers have been developed by the contact with the plants and by what they call dietas, the diets. The diets are when the curandero spends very often long time, like months or even years sometimes, following a diet. Usually this involves no salt, no sugar, no sexual activity. Usually it's only like some boiled rice or some cereals, and taking one master plant every day, daily. And by doing this, they manage to incorporate the power of the plants. Then with this power, when people need some healing, it can be like physiological, like some illness, or also psychological, they go to the curandero, and as the curandero has learned the power from the plants that he has dieted, he can heal the patient. In Western psychotherapy, the model is a bit different in the sense that the therapist is not expected to have supernatural powers, but it is true that also in our society, if we see somebody, with a white coat, or I am a psychologist or a psychiatrist, there is some expectation of healing capacities. So in that sense, it's not, in Western psychotherapy, is not as important as it can be in Amazonian shamanism, but you can see that it also happens. Also, very, very important that we can learn from Amazonian shamanism is the way of working with the plants. Usually it's in a group setting. Usually there is some music involved in guiding the ceremonies. It's very important also in this tradition, the sense of community. So when they drink ayahuasca, they drink it in a group, and in a group that they know each other, in the sense that they know who the other people are, and there is this creation of community while they take ayahuasca together. And this is very, very important, this and the music. And I think this is something that is very important that Western psychedelic psychotherapy takes into consideration, because the model that is being used now is most of the time is not group therapy, it's individual. It's like with psilocybin, the model that is being worked on is one patient with two therapies, usually male and female, and in a hospital room. There is some music, usually they put some headphones, but there is missing this group setting, and also this community setting. And this is so important. In my experience, in my work, the group is the medicine, really. It is possible, but of course it's much more difficult, because in the jungle it's the ideal environment, because you are in a little hut in the middle of the jungle, uh, far away from everyone, no distractions. So it's the perfect environment for letting the plants get into you and learn from it. It's possible to do the dieta in here in Europe, but there are so many difficulties, so many distractions, because it's like you're usually uh, it's not easy to isolate yourself in our society. And if some people are interested in following this tradition and do a dieta, it's possible. It's possible to get the medicines. Nowadays, you can get them from the internet. And it's also possible to create like a space of tranquility, or even isolations, turning off the phones, or uh, getting into a space when one is not disturbed. But of course it will be much more challenging than in the jungle. In the jungle there is no Wi-Fi, so you have no problem with that. Use of ritual, it gives a structure, and in this kind of work, having a structure is so important, because a way that these plants work is by destructuring, in the sense that many psychological problems that we have are due to a maladaptive structure of our belief system or our personality. So one way the psychedelics can cure this is, when you take a psychedelic, very often all the structures, they just vanish. So this can be very healing, because you are kind of destroying the maladaptive structures, and then with the possibility of being able to rebuild them again in a better way, in a more adaptive way. But at the same time, uh, it can be terrorizing. It can be very, very difficult to go through this process of destructuring and restructuring. So what the ritual does is it gives a structure, a solid structure, so it's possible to destructure the ego, you can say, during the ceremonies. It helps a lot when you have taken a psychedelic and all of a sudden everything you believe was true disappears. So it's very helpful in those moments to experience yourself in a group with a leader that is following very clear steps. Also, the ritual is a way of transmitting knowledge and transmitting know-how, in the sense that these rituals with psychedelic plants, they have been developed for centuries, and each generation has transmitted to the next generation a good way of working with these plants, and they have put them in rituals. So when the new generation of curanderos starts learning the ritual for working with the plant, they are receiving all the knowledge and all the wisdom and all the know-how that has been developed by countless generations before. Well, this is very, very important, because in this tradition comes from the Amazonian culture that is animistic, in the sense that they believe that every plant has a spirit, and that communicating with this spirit, it can help to find healing and clarity. So in the Western worldview, this is considered a superstition or something, delusional. And the Western worldview, it has had like a very powerful um, consequence of effectiveness, in the sense that Western culture has dominated the world in the last couple of centuries because of the scientific revolution. But at the same time, it has suffered what we can call a process of disenchantment, is in the sense that everything that is magic about life, or everything that is mysterious about life, it's like it has dissolved. And in many aspects, uh, in our culture, we have fallen into the extreme of what is called scientism. Scientism is believing that only Western science can explain uh, the universe, the world, and the way the worldview of scientism is quite a it's quite a horrible one, because it's like we are in we are separated from this universe. We are uh, trying to extract resources from nature, but we are something like separated from it. It's like we have this intellect and we are studying, observing, and measuring nature, but we are different from nature, and this is very painful. This is very, very, very painful. Uh, so I think the Amazonian animistic worldview is much more kind of natural, and it makes you feel part of a enchanted world where we are not only the only conscious beings, but also the plants are conscious and we can relate to them, and we are one with nature. So it feels much more, healthy, integral, um, and also it promotes well-being, because I think the level of mental illness is much higher in Western societies than in tribal societies. They maybe our scientific model is very effective for dominating the planet, but regarding emotional well-being is not so good. That's the main difference into how to explain the world. It's like in the scientific worldview, we explain it with just molecules interacting in our synapses and producing an effect. In the Amazonian animistic worldview, it's the spirit of the plant that inhabits you and teaches you or heals you. Uh, well, I my my point of view, like being like in the middle of these two worlds, is I think both interpretations are useful. Both are. I mean, it's very important to understand what molecules are being active, or what is happening in our brains while we take these substances. At the same time, I think it's very, very important also the Amazonian worldview, because you can. It's very difficult to develop like a good working relationship with a healing plant if you treat it just like a bunch of molecules. It's a bit, for instance, what happens with the coca plant and cocaine. In in the Western world, we have taken the coca plant and extracted the alkaloid cocaine, and then it becomes like another product for consumption, and then it can develop addiction, it can develop mental illness, it can be very destructive. Instead, if you go Peru, Bolivia, and you see people chewing the coca leaves, it's actually quite healthy in the sense that it's full of nutrients. It gives energy. It gives health actually, because they are treating the plant not as a molecule, but also a spirit. And also there is this uh, ritual and respectful way of relating with the plant. So the just having this molecular worldview of teacher plants, it can become problematic. This is a fascinating story because actually the tobacco, it came into Europe when the first Spanish or Portuguese people went to South America, the conquistadores, and then they brought back all these plants like potatoes, tomatoes, and then they brought back tobacco. But when they brought back tobacco, they didn't say that it was a sacred plant. I mean, it was a sacred plant because it was used by shamans, it was used for healing, it was used in a ritual way. But of course, in those times, if you said that a plant was sacred, you got burned by the Spanish Inquisition. You couldn't say this plant is sacred because they say, "Ooh, this is demonic." So they introduced the tobacco plants in Europe, but without saying that it was medicinal or that it was sacred. It was just a plant. And at the beginning, the first use was rapé, was by snuff, and for centuries that was the main use. And then I believe it was around the 19th century that it starts like smoking. And what happened that when you treat medicine plants without respect or without knowledge, then it can become destructive. So this is what has happened in our society, that tobacco has become a drug of abuse. It has become we have developed a toxic relationship with it, and it's the cause of so many illnesses and deaths every year because of tobacco related deaths. Um, Instead, in the way of using in the Amazon indigenous people, they use it as rapé. So it's they inhale the powder of the tobacco. So there is no combustion. So there is no CO2. There is no tar. And CO2 and tar are the killers, really. Is what provokes cancer. It was what provokes vascular diseases. So in itself, the use of snuff, it has no health problems, and also by keeping it in a ritual, is like they are not taking rapé all the time, like just like before work, or they take rapé in a sacred moment, in a ritual setting with concentration, getting ready to receive the teachings and the spirit of the plant. And so doing it this way, it doesn't become harmful. It becomes the opposite. It becomes a healing relationship. So what I found fascinating is like millions and millions of people in the Western world are using a very powerful shamanic plant without having an idea of what they are smoking. It's like there is complete ignorance of the origins of this plant. And they are taking this super powerful plant and smoking. And of course, the plant, if it's treated without respect, it kills you. It's a powerful plant. I take rapé once a day. Usually it's a moment uh, in the evening after the day of work, then together with my wife, we blow rapé each other. And it's a very special moment where we, after our day of work, we can sit in the garden and have this rapecito and have a moment for, you know, rest and be together. It's a very very special moment. I try not to use rapé mindlessly or when I just before getting to work in the computer. Yes, so this I avoid. Then one interesting thing of our times, especially in Western society, is that we are exposed to all sorts of culture and teachings from all over the world. So my daily practice is yoga. I practice yoga every day, and also meditation. So this helps me a lot to keep centered and to be able and ready to do my work of helping people. This is related to what we were talking before about the dietas. So one of the effects of the dieta is that at some point after months of drinking the same plant and following these dietary restrictions, what happens is that you start dreaming with the plants. It's like lucid dreams, and you experience the spirits of the plant visiting you in dreams. And then in those dreams, they teach you songs. It's songs that are taught by the plants. And these songs, they call it icaros, they are medicine songs in the sense that in the melody, it's concentrated the healing power of the plant. So when you sing this song to somebody, this person receives is the same as if they had drunk the plant. Uh, so also when the curandero is singing the icaro, he or she connects with the vibration of that plant, because also the evocative power of music. When we sing something, is like we can go back to the moment where we have listened to that song the first time. So this is the same with the icaros. When the curandero is singing the icaro, he remembers and re-experiences what he was experiencing during the dieta, and he can connect with this healing vibrational state that the plant is allowing. And by doing so, this kind of vibration is transmitted to the people participating in the ceremony. It's possible with more and more with time and experience. In the oldest curanderos, they don't usually drink the plants. They can only maybe take a drop or smell it or even sing a song about it, and they are already in that state. It's like we learn to get into this state. If we see it on a Western scientific model, is like neural pathways that are being created, and with practice, those neural pathways can be activated without the need of the external molecules, just by a song, for instance. The song activates the neural pathways. The traditional model where the leader of the ceremony sings and plays music, it's very, very effective in the sense that if you go to the Amazon, you will kind of uh, experience the power of a curandero by the way he sings or the way he plays. It's what makes one curandero different than the other. The voice, the melody, the way they sing. So the power of live music is amazing. The thing is that in the Western psychedelic psychotherapy model, I mean, it's quite a lot to be asking for a psychiatrist after studying so much, medicine and psychiatry. They even need to learn an instrument. So it's not something that is happening. So in the Western model, they are using headphones and recorded music. But in my experience, that I have worked with both models, live music is much more effective. It's like there is like another dimension when you are hearing the voice of or the guitar of somebody live. It's completely different than when you are listening to it in headphones. It's one is virtual and the other one is real. Now that the Western medical world is opening up to psychedelic therapy, I really wish that there was like this openness to receiving part of the knowledge and wisdom of the indigenous tradition, so that the therapists, they learn how to sing also, they learn how to play music, they go to the jungle, they know the culture. It's like it's something. Sometimes it's very tough to see the developments. Like, for instance, now in Canada, they have developed an ayahuasca pill. They have extracted the molecules and they have put it in a pill. So, and they are selling it like, yes, it's much better because it's you don't have to vomit and it's a standardized quantity and you only need to take a pill. And then it's like, no, why do you do that? You are missing all the important parts of it. So I think there is a lot of work to do into opening the medical psychedelic worldview to the indigenous Amazonian worldview. The thing is it's very difficult for the medical profession to open up to spirits, because there are some. So there is some research that has shown links between the intensity of a mystical experience and the therapeutic outcomes of psilocybin therapy. So there is like the medical profession knows that when there is like a mystical experience, then the therapeutic effects are much higher. But I don't see it happening very soon that all of a sudden the medical profession starts considering the spiritual side of life. And this is something that maybe will happen, but I'm not sure that we will see it in our lifetimes. Acceptance and commitment therapy is basically Buddhism applied to psychotherapy. So it brings all the teachings of that tradition, and it shows the importance of developing an experience of self, not of ego, but of self, just like presence. And this is something that you can also achieve in psychedelic therapy or in indigenous ceremonies. This sense of the ego dissolving and just connecting with being, with our presence. One of the most interesting insights of the acceptance and commitment therapy is that most of our psychological pain, it's related to the linguistic part of our brain, to our intellect. It's our intellect that is creating the stories that makes us suffer. And I mean, it's quite clear, no? They said, put the example that in the natural world, in the animal world, the concept of suicide is nearly unknown. In our species, it's very high. It's very high. So, and the main difference is the intellect. Is the way of that we have of representing reality. So what acceptance and commitment therapy teaches is like, go beyond the intellect. Is like there is no way you're going to solve your psychological problem by the way you solve your professional problems as well, or like problem solving and trying to find an idea and get out of that, because it's not going to work. You know, emotional problems are not solvable in this way. So what ACT does, the first thing they do is like, stop trying to solve your problem. It's like it's the trying to solve it that is making it worse, you know, that is creating the problem. It's like when somebody is depressed, it's like, oh no, I have to, this is unacceptable, I have to do something. And then what they do, it makes things worse. In fact, I don't know who said it, but I think it's true that depressed people are people who are unable to be sad or have a difficulty to be sad. And yeah, what ACT teaches is like, accept what you are going through, and at the same time have clarity about what you want to do in your life. And that's the commitment part. It's like you accept your psychological suffering without trying to suppress it. And then at the same time, you commit with your actions to what you consider is your goal in life, or your what gives meaning to your life. I think it's a very profound and effective way of psychotherapy. In the Amazonian cultures, the integration aspect is like embedded in the culture, because they take it in a tribal setting. So they are all the time knowing each other and sharing what they have experienced, and it comes naturally. Instead, in the Western model, it's people that don't know each other mostly, and they meet in some place during the weekend, and then after the weekend, everybody goes to their families, to their house. So it's very important to create during the weekend a space of sharing. You know what? It's a bit like recreating the tribal setting for a little moment, no? Where we are in circle and we are together and we share. Yeah. So, and this is very important, because this is also one of the ways that the healing happens in these traditions. And it makes sense, because one of the problems of our culture is the isolation. Yeah, there is a lot of isolation. We are a culture that is very focused on work and effectiveness and performance, and not so much in community. So there is more and more people living alone. And of course, there is a relationship between this and the high level of mental health problems. So in this, it's very important in those retreats, the sense of community is what I said, that the group is the medicine. Yeah, well, in the yogic traditions, for instance, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there is one sutra when he mentions clearly that the way towards samadhi are, and one is the yoga practice, and the other is oshadi, is like medicinal plants or medicinal herbs. So in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, they are already mentioned. The thing is that it's a more unstable way of reaching those states. If you reach samadhi after years of meditation and tapas, no austerities, it's a state that becomes stable. So you can maintain it. When you reach this state through medicinal plants, it's a state that you can access very, very fast. But also, when the effect comes down, also you get out of that state. So it's not that stable. What I have found is that for me, what works is a combination of the two, in the sense that I have like a yoga and meditation daily practice, and this is my way, like slowly, I'm getting there. And then when I go to these retreats, I can experience samadhi, those states where the intellect is silent, and there is just pure presence. And it's great to experience this and to connect with this state, even if after in the morning it will be a memory because it's not so stable. But at least I have this experience of what is possible. I have this experience of that. And this is also a great encouragement for keeping the practice. Sometimes it can be difficult to keep a spiritual practice when you don't know exactly where you're going. So I find that the both of them, they complement each other very well. Also, when I am experiencing samadhi with medicinal plants, I am aware that this is something that is not going to be permanent, that it is not going to be stable. And I know that it is something that I have to work in my daily practice. But I think it's good to have a glimpse of what can be achieved. It's that has been research. There was a Dr. Roland Griffiths. He did all these experiments on psilocybin, and there was a direct correlation between the intensity of mystical experience and the therapeutic outcomes. And yeah, this is the same. We were talking about the acceptance and commitment therapy. Once that you get out of your intellect, then the psychological problems vanish because they are created by our intellect, really. First thing is that it's very important to do a proper screening of the people participating in ayahuasca or psychedelic ceremonies, because people suffering from schizophrenia, it can be the psychedelic experience can trigger one psychotic episode. So for them, it's not indicated. And I have, not very often, but I think I have seen only twice in 20 years that I've been working, people that were suffering from schizophrenia, but they were not diagnosed, and they took a psychedelic and they got into a psychotic breakdown. After it was, I haven't met anyone like permanently damaged. It's like in the sense like these two cases, after some antipsychotic medication, they got back to health, back to normal. But it's very important with work with psychedelics to screen people suffering from psychosis. It's very, very important. Then what happens during the ceremony, especially with higher dosages, and sometimes if you see it from the outside, it can be very similar to a psychotic breakdown. I think is not the same in the sense that usually with the psychotic breakdown, there is like a sense of confusion and a sense of feeling the world very often in a paranoid way, like the world is attacking me. And with a psychedelic therapy, what the worldview that produces after the ceremony usually is completely the opposite. It's like trust in the universe, trust in the connection with nature, with others. So it's on the other side. It's completely opposite. So I would say that yes, it's very important to do screening, but a person that does not suffer from schizophrenia doesn't have a higher risk of getting into psychosis because of taking a psychedelic. And there is solid research on that, especially in the Brazilian communities with tens of thousands of people that take ayahuasca during the whole lifetime. They have done research on them, and the levels of schizophrenia are exactly, or sometimes in some research even lower than the general population.